And welcome back. I am hungry. Let's do some political potluck. And political potluck, of course, I can't cook, but where each of us brings a story to the party, just like bringing a dish to a potluck dinner. Quite frankly, I've never been to one in my life, but hey, if they say it exists, it exists. So here's my favorite story of the day. I just call him my good old Uncle Joe.
To state the obvious, the past 6 years have been really, really hard for this country. And they've been really tough for our party. Just ask Steve. I mean, they've been really tough for our party. But together, it's because together, we made some really, really tough decisions. Decisions that weren't at all popular, hard to explain.
Now, picture a parallel universe for a moment, and any GOP candidate saying that on the campaign trail, or just, in other words, Joe Biden, I actually looked this up before, Joe Biden's greatest gaffes. And there's a list on Google. You could get the top 10, the top 20, even the top 50 exists of gaffes that Joe Biden has made. But it's the John Madden rule. We used to talk about Brett Favre. You say, well, that's just Brett Favre being Brett Favre. All we hear is it's just Joe Biden being Joe Biden. Why does he get a pass for being an airhead when other people, they're called stupid, but Joe Biden's just called Joe?
Bless his heart. I have to say that at least once a day. Bless his heart. Here's the thing. When Joe Biden talks, I'm always like, I know what Joe is trying to say, and he just can't.
So you root for him.
Yeah. I root for him because I think, first of all, he's a good-hearted guy. Second of all, I think what he's referring to, now keep in mind that he's speaking to his own party. He's speaking in a close-knit way to his family, in a sense. They're talking about how they've made some really unconventional decisions, some tough decisions, some counterintuitive decisions.
And that the last 6 years has been tough on the country. He's been in charge.
Well, I think what he meant was that there were a lot of there's a lot of big issues and challenges. There's we've had a lot going on, and I just think he's referring to what's been happening in the world more than what.
Before you jump in, can I share one of my favorites?
Sure.
He said, "I never had an interest in being a mayor because that's a real job. You have to produce. That's why I've been a senator for 36 years."
Well, that's
Yogi Berra.
It's an honest man. You know, we never get to see honest politicians. We don't know how to react when we get one, and that's who Joe is. And what always cracks me up about him, he is one of the smartest people who has ever served in the Senate. If you look at what he knows, particularly on foreign affairs, guy is amazing. And if you look at some of the calls that he's made that didn't come to fruition, everybody will go back and go, yeah, we should have done that. Joe is a really smart guy. He was a great senator. I think he was a great vice president. And he's an honest guy, so he just says stuff. Will it keep him from being president, by the way? Yeah, probably will.
Yeah, I'm just saying that if a Republican said the same thing, it's suddenly not charming and honest anymore.
Right. That's because it's who says it. I know Republicans who I think are charming and cute, and if they say something, I'd probably get a kick out of it. There's not too many.
Right.
It's because everything he says we know is true. We already knew that senators don't do a whole lot.
Right. Yeah. Dan Quayle, it probably knocked over like 80 TVs since he took office as vice president. Like, I don't get it. I misspelled one word.
He lowered his handicap, 40 points when he was in the White House, Dan Quayle.
How many times did Congress shut everything down last year? I lost track, I mean.
I have two. So instead of trying to count, I want to hear about your political politics.
Yes, okay.
And you have 2 minutes,
so there's a woman, Marissa Alexander. She's lives in Florida. She just spent 3 years in prison for firing a warning shot at her abusive husband, who was threatening her, coming at her. Did not hit him, was not intended to hit him. It was intended to scare him off. Now, he had been arrested twice already for battery. He was on probation. She got sentenced to 20 years in prison. This was all this all came to light when George Zimmerman walked on Florida's Stand Your Ground law. Stand Your Ground was her defense as well. She is an African-American woman, and this highlighted the fact that, there's a lot of play in how that's applied.
What was she charged with if she just fired a warning shot into the air?
Attempted murder.
Really?
Well, obviously there was some dispute over whether she fired it in the air or not. Who knows? But
he was unharmed.
Right. And the key to the story is
actually
killed somebody.
Did she have a record going into it? I know that shouldn't affect the case
I don't know
necessarily.
that she did.
She did not. And
did her husband have a record?
Her husband was on probation. for
Really?
battery. He had been arrested
Yeah.
twice already. So, you know, look at all the facts. So she just had to plead to lesser charges so that she would only have to spend 3 years in prison. So she just served patiently those full 3 years in prison.
And you know what? I'm going to say something that you will rarely hear me say on television, radio, or anywhere. The Koch brothers deserve some credit for what they're trying to do right now with criminal justice in this country. She is a perfect example of what's wrong with our criminal justice system, what happened to her. The Koch brothers, to their credit, are starting to spend money on making it a much fairer system so this doesn't happen to her again.
Well,
Well,
that's
that would
very
be a
interesting.
good application of their.
Yes, it would.
Well-
Absolutely, and Rick will be actually watching the Super Bowl with the Koch brothers this weekend, so that'll be interesting.
I'd
Coming
like
up
to see
next,
Super Bowl.
Political Potluck continues with Rick Underspick. This is the Daily Wrap on Newsmax TV. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap, everybody. Let's continue with our political potluck stories. Rick Unger, what the hell is bothering you today?
Oh, there's so much I hardly know where to begin.
You look
Let's-
bothered.
Yeah, I do look bothered, right? Let's start with this. A Democratic Congressman, Tulsi Gabbard from Hawaii, actually attacked the White House. Maybe that's overstating it, but had a problem with the fact that the White House will not use the words Islamic terrorist. Let's take a look at it. We have it on tape.
We have to identify exactly who they are. Something happened today where Secretary Kerry made a statement which I think was very evident of the problem that we're seeing, where in a speech she talked about how these Islamic extremists, that they are engaged in, and I quote, criminal conduct rooted in alienation, poverty, thrill-seeking, and other factors. And he went on to say that ultimately this fight will be determined by our success in creating prosperity that's widely shared. This is completely missing the point of exactly this radical Islamic ideology that's fueling these people, and mistakenly, a huge mistake, thinking that somehow, okay, well look, if we give them $10,000 and give them a nice place to live, that somehow they're not going to be engaged in this.
So that actually wasn't the right tape, because she didn't say so. I'll tell you what she said. She basically said that if the White House can't acknowledge the problem, Islamic terrorism, that they can't defeat the problem. Now, I actually agree with her that the White House is being way too sensitive about the term. I really do. I mean, if somebody commits an act of terror in the name of Islam, they're an Islamic terrorist. Doesn't mean that everybody who is Muslim or who believes in Islam is a terrorist. It means nothing of the kind. But the sensitivity, to me, it goes along with so much. As you know, I tend to agree with most policy in this White House. But their communications has been one of the worst that I have ever seen in my life, and this is another example. And by the way, it doesn't mean that we won't be successful in defeating terrorism. One has nothing to do with the
Right.
other. So she was wrong, in my opinion, about that.
Absolutely. I mean, the work we're actually doing on counterterrorism has nothing to do with how we term it. Here are my two problems with this. I think this is a smart move on the part of the White House. First of all, Islamic terrorism. A lot of American Muslims have a problem with that because this is not actually Islam. This is not in the name of Islam. True peaceful Muslims.
But it is in
This
the
is.
name of
But what if it were reversed and they were calling it the Christian terror?
Be the
you
same
know?
thing if they were
Christian
doing
terror.
it in the name of that.
Christians would be, but they're not practicing real Islam.
I get that. I totally
So-
Where are these Christian terrorists?
No.
Make sure I don't go on
that's
spring break
that's
there.
an example.
Okay.
Is if it were
Actually, there have
reversed.
been,
It's a hypothetical.
There
And
have
there
been
has been-
Christian
there has
terrorists,
been plenty
and there
of
was
them.
the JDL. There have been Jewish terrorists.
However, that's not my
So-
point. My point is that we have to be sensitive to other religions. They're Americans too, and they're having to hear about Islamic terror when they do not see this as Islamic.
I don't see it as insensitive, but I'll
that's
tell
a
you what I
front.
do see it as. Another example of here we are talking about it, and it shouldn't
Exactly.
be an
Look,
issue.
all we're doing every time we say Islamic terrorist, every time, which is every 5 seconds in America, we are reiterating and commercializing the branding that ISIS. In particular, is very proud of. I
that's
mean,
what we're
look,
talking
these
about.
people are doing things like creating these high-profile, high-quality film trailers. They have sophisticated propaganda on social media. They're reaching out to young, disenfranchised people online. This is fantastic for them. Every time we say Islamic terror,
Which you've said 8
they
times during
get
this, by the way. So
exactly.
you're not helping matters.
I
very
know.
much.
I am really screwing
Look,
it up.
look,
But
if
my
they-
point is
go ahead.
why keep branding them? We need to talk about this as terrorism and not give them the satisfaction of calling it Islamic.
And we'll have to end it on that note. I just say if they had Tinder in Syria and other parts of that world, then they probably wouldn't be disenfranchised and have better stuff to do than join ISIS.
Yeah, and can I just quickly throw in?
quickly
that
throw it in.
If you call somebody who's doing terrorism in the name of Islam, it doesn't. You're not saying that they have the religion correct, and you're certainly not impugning
It
hundreds of
insinuates it.
millions. No, it doesn't.
It
No,
does.
it doesn't. You're not impugning hundreds of millions of Islamic believers who are absolutely wonderful people.
And on that note, we'll make the easy transition to this headline. Birth certificate asks if a woman who is giving birth is female. Is there a choice in this matter? Can I get pregnant? I'm sure my wife would prefer that. That's for sure. The New York City Health Department has a new form for parents requesting birth certificates that asks woman giving birth if she's male or female. Gender? Really, Rick? Quickly, this won't take that much
I have
time.
absolutely nothing to say about this. It's
Oh,
what
my
do you
goodness,
say?
guys? This is, we want to giggle about it, but this is a very serious rights issue for
is?
people who are LGBT.
How so?
Because if they won't have their name on the birth certificate if
Wait,
they have
but-
a baby.
But only women, as far
Without
as I
going
know,
to-
can give birth. That's what it's asking.
It's about the transgender community and the
what changes it?
LGBT community.
Only women can give birth in the human
Right,
biology.
but if someone is in transition going from being a woman to a man,
Yeah.
but is having a baby, or if a lesbian couple is having a baby.
still
This
women.
is about legal rights, though. This is about.
We got to move on from this,
I
unfortunately.
support
But
that
we
community
should be
150%,
respecting. We
but
should
this
be
is
respecting.
stupid.
Right. I gained enough weight during
LGBT
the holidays where I looked like I was in
community. But
my
if you
second
look
trimester.
further-
We got to go. I hate to end this conversation. It's so fascinating. Coming up next, we're going to go have some fun talking about a little football game that the NFL will not allow us to name. It's all right here on the Daily Wrap, and it's only on Newsmax TV.